We're on the way to a couple of projects that are under construction at the moment. One of them is in the Gap. It's 10 townhouses or 10 houses. It's on the side of a hill. It slopes up from the road, and it's a really unique design, state-of-the-art design project with townhouses that'll be built over the next 12 months. So there's that one that we're going to first in the Gap, and then secondly after that there's a couple of high-end homes that we're building in Kenmore off a land estate that we did. Again, another one on the side of the hill. Both projects are in very similar locations. They're in green zones where they're both about 10 kilometers out from Brisbane CBD, and they're in like these green wedge zones where there's a lot of protected trees. There's not much infill development. In other words, it's highly restricted supply in both areas. So over the last 5 years, both the Gap and Kenmore have seen significant growth, like 10% year on year, even when the market wasn't even moving. And then over the last few years with the post-COVID boom, they've gone up by about 50% each suburb as well. So I think the capital growth in these suburbs was something that I identified 5+ years ago when I first bought the sites. So they are projects that have been going on for some time. They're not in and out a couple of years. Both projects took almost 2 years just to get approvals on the site. And the one in particular that's taken a little bit longer is the one in the Gap. And that's been off the back of actually finding a builder that has availability and that is able to actually complete the project. So it has been quite difficult to get a builder in the current market over the last couple of years to complete a project of that size. So the build contract now is $4.5 million. It started off at $3 million. So there's been a 50% increase just in the building contract alone, let alone the other cost increases as well. To lock a builder down in the current market has been quite difficult the last couple of years, to lock them down on a fixed price contract and a project of that size. So when you're building a normal house, it's actually a lot easier to find a builder that will build just a single house, whether that's single level or double level, versus building 9 or 10 townhouses. Most of the builders will either do like a high rise, like the Hutchinson builders of the world, that might do a $10 or $20 million project or more. And then you've got the home builders that might build just a home that might be $500,000 or $1 million, sort of at the top range. So the Gap has taken a number of builders to find not only the right builder that will actually do the project and complete it, and I know that's going to complete it with a high standard, but then also to find a builder that's got capacity in the current market that can deliver a project like that. It's taken some time to get to that point. So all in all, both projects have had substantial capital growth. I expect that both suburbs will continue to have substantial growth because I still feel like they're undervalued compared with the neighboring suburbs. So I bought the project in the Gap not long after I actually bought the project that I've completed in Kenmore. So I mentioned earlier, in Kenmore and the Gap, both 10 kilometers out from the CBD of Brisbane. They're both very similar suburbs in that they're green wedge zones, lots of trees protected. You feel like you're out in the country, but you're only 20 minutes drive to the city. So what happened in Kenmore when I bought the property a number of years ago, so this was about 2016, I think I first purchased the property, or maybe 2017 in Kenmore. And when I bought that property in Kenmore, it was going through a regentrification as well. So I saw the start of that regentrification where, again, there was a large white Australian demographic that had lived in the homes for 30 years, and they were selling up their homes, and there were developers building banks of 20, 30 townhomes. There was a massive development done by Avid that was about 70 townhomes, I believe, something like that. So there's probably about 400 townhouses built over the course of about 3 or 4 years. And a lot of those were aimed at downsizers, and a lot of them were purchased by downsizer owner-occupiers that were downsizing from the big family home they'd been in for 30 years, and they just wanted something that they could lock up again. So again, the same thing as other suburbs like the Gap. People were selling their homes for, at the time, $700,000, and they were buying a townhouse for the same money, $700,000-800,000. They were trading in their house on a big block of land that needed a lot of renovation, and they were getting something new that they could just lock up and travel overseas or travel around Australia, whatever they were doing. So that regentrification changed the values in the suburb because there was new product being entered into the market. And then again, the buyers of these other homes that other people had lived in for 30, 40 years, the new buyers were young families moving out from the city. So you got this new wave of professionals moving to that suburb, so to Kenmore. And so what they were doing were buying these old homes. They were either knocking them down if they were developers, or even if they were homeowners, knocking them down, building a new home, or splitting the block into two. So that was all happening, and it's still continuing to happen now. But over the course of that 4-year window, when 400 odd townhomes were built, the townhouses actually added value to that entire suburb because it was new stock entering the market. So that's still happening to a degree. There's still one large project that's about 110 townhomes, which Sunland Group bought from a developer. So Sunland is developing that, and those townhomes are selling for like 1.2, 1.3 million now. So it's the same proposition. People are now selling their home. Their homes were worth 700,000-800,000. Now they're worth 1.2, 1.3 for the same home. And they're selling their home and they're upgrading or downsizing to these townhomes. So they're doing a switch. So if you're in a suburb where you see this trend, it can only mean that over time, the properties will grow in value, providing that there's no oversupply, and also providing that you haven't entered that last end or the last stage of that growth phase. So in summary, I'll show you guys the couple of projects that I'm working on. They're both 10Ks west of Brisbane CBD. They're both under construction. One of them's almost completed. The other one has just started on the footings. And both these projects were in or are in very similar suburbs where they're in green wedge zones. They've experienced some significant capital growth over the time I've owned them, and they'll continue to experience capital growth into the future. So if you're looking at doing these types of projects in these areas, or even just buying and holding property in highly restricted areas, there's more money over the long term to be made in passive income than there is in doing development. Development's just a function of building in equity, so manufacturing equity, but it's really the long-term capital growth that is where the true wealth lies. So if you're holding property, you want to be holding it in really great suburbs. They don't necessarily have to be 10Ks from the CBD, but I think the same principles apply in other suburbs where they're in highly restricted supply. You've got buyers entering the market that have capacity to pay over time, and that trend will be a long-term trend, not just a short, instant trend where you might get some really quick capital growth, but then over the long term, it stagnates. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy this, and we'll take you on the tour on the projects.